Hey everyone, welcome to Be the Change. My name is Lily Mott, and today's episode is about how change comes when you find balance with the external and internal pressures. This week's episode features Byrne, who is a youth social activist from Northern Ireland. Eden was previously featured on Troy's podcast, the Forgotten Generation podcast, on Be the Change Media Network, and I am so excited to have her on Be the Change podcast now. So without further ado, let's get started with this episode featuring Byrne.
I'm Eden, I'm 20, I'm from Northern Ireland. I'm a youth social activist and I do a lot of work around like physical health, mental health and well-being, and also a bit about like education and anti-bullying as well.
That is a great way to get started, Eden. So, can you tell me a little bit more about what inspired you to get started with this work? I'd love to know more about the background story that led to this work as a youth social activist.
Yeah, so I joined my local anti-bullying forum here in Northern Ireland when I was still in secondary school, and I kind of thought, oh, this is quite a good experience and something quite different. I didn't really think much of it. I kind of thought, oh, I'm gonna go to university. I'm gonna take a more active role in like my sport and taekwondo. I'm gonna be quite busy, so this is just kind of a nice thing to do alongside my A levels. And then I sadly got quite unwell and developed long COVID, and then decided that I wasn't going to be able to go to university. I wasn't really able to sort of work or go to do my sport and kind of socialize and stuff like that. So I kind of used my experiences from the anti-bullying forum to kind of do more. And I looked into different charities that kind of meant something to me, and I was really passionate about the topics that they were focusing on. And then that made me kind of want to get more involved and kind of use my time productively. And yeah, it was really good.
That's so great that you managed to take something that could have been really negative and now you're using your time and your energy to help others and make change. That is exactly what this podcast is about. So, as far as the work that you're doing with the I Will movement and different organizations, can you tell me about some of the most memorable moments or your favorite moments throughout your time as an activist?
Yeah, so there's definitely been quite a lot. I want to say my favorite one with I Will in particular was during I Will week. Me and a group of girls who I'm really good friends with hosted a webinar for basically anybody who was interested in helping youth overcome barriers to like youth social action, like participation. And that was a really amazing experience. I never like properly hosted a webinar before or like done anything like that. So it was incredible, and it was really good to work with other ambassadors and get to know them as well. And another highlight for me would be last summer I worked on a piece for the Lancet Medical Journal with another young person on our lived experience with long COVID. And I think getting that published in February this year was a big highlight for me, and it was really great to see kind of the feedback from that, and hopefully it's made a difference and kind of brought to light kind of the struggles that we face as young people who have health conditions.
Those are some really important opportunities, and I think those are great examples of how you put yourself out there and had a great experience in return, which I think is something that happens a lot in social action work. And I think that you have to make that initial step and put yourself out there, but it can be so rewarding when it works out. So that's just a great story. Can you tell me a little bit more about what you're excited about as far as the future? What's next for you with your social action?
Absolutely. So me, Troy, and a few other young people who are youth social activists and involved in the I Will movement are starting up our own kind of participation group slash organization called the Future Leaders Hub, which is really exciting. I think also for me, I'm working with long COVID kids quite a lot. So I've been helping on their youth panel. And we've been taking part in like lots of different research projects, like hosting interviews and stuff like that. So that's been really exciting. And we've also got our own podcast coming out in a few months, so that'll be really exciting. And yeah, I think I've got a few upcoming blogs for ambitious about autism and different charities like Young Minds and stuff like that. So yeah, I've got quite a lot, and I'm sure there'll be a lot more things coming as well.
I love that, and I think it's so exciting to hear. And now I want to shift gears a little bit. What is some of the best advice or words of wisdom that you've ever gotten that have really stuck with you and motivated you to do this work? Does anything like that come to mind for you?
What piece of advice I've been given has just been to kind of get the balance and kind of make sure that you don't burn yourself out and make sure that you're kind of looking after yourself, because I feel like it's really easy to take on different opportunities and kind of fill your schedule, and especially if you have like a health condition, or even if you don't, activism burnout is real, and I feel like it's not often talked about enough how much kind of external pressure and internal pressure we put on ourselves to kind of make sure that we're doing everything and like getting involved with everything, and then you can just kind of get into that crash state where you can't really do anything, um and you kind of lose track of what you started this for and like why you wanted to get involved in the first place. So I think it's really important just to get the balance of kind of having some downtime and relaxing, and also trying not to put too much pressure on yourself. Like if you need a break, have a break. It's These things will be there in the future, you can come back to them.
I think that is such an important piece of advice to keep in mind, and I think it's one that many of us are working on and are constantly trying to monitor for ourselves. So, thank you so much for sharing that. I think that's great. I have one more question for you. It's kind of similar to this last one, but lots of young people want to make change, but they may not know how to get started with that work. What advice do you have for those people who may be listening?
I think if you're quite nervous about it, like I was quite nervous about it, and it's perfectly natural to be nervous about getting involved in something different, especially if you don't like know the group of people, or it's something that you've never really done or experienced before. I would say just to start small. So just start, like maybe you could sign a few petitions, maybe do some research, even have like conversations with like people in your school or uni or college, about like topics that you care about, and then move on to other things. To start looking at like charities, if you're like passionate about environment or mental health or physical disability or stuff like that. Just start small and then build on that, and then your confidence will grow over time, and then you'll be into the activism world and will never want to get out of it and be looking for every single opportunity under the sun to get involved. But definitely important to get the balance.
I really enjoyed this conversation with Eden, and after working on Troy's episode of his podcast featuring Eden, I am so glad I got the chance to feature her on my podcast too. I really loved Eden's advice about finding balance in all of the work you're doing and managing the pressures that you might be feeling. I think that is such an important topic to discuss, especially when it comes to youth social action, because activists, like Eden, are often juggling so much and sometimes just need to be reminded that it's okay to take a break. I really enjoyed this conversation with Eden and want to highlight her incredibly important advice one more time, because change comes when you find balance with the external and internal pressures. Thank you so much for listening to this episode, and you can find Eden on LinkedIn, and I included that link in the description of this episode. If you want to talk about anything I mentioned, please reach out to me by email at lily@bethechangepodcast.org or on Instagram at Be The Change Media Network. I am working on expanding Be The Change Media Network, which means bringing you more inspiring stories from amazing guests. If you enjoyed this episode, I would really appreciate it if you could leave the podcast a rating and a comment, because it will help these stories to reach, educate, and inspire more people. And I would also love to hear your thoughts and feedback. Tune in for my next episode, but until then, be the change you wish to see in the world. Bye, guys.